Welcome to another episode of Cannabis Health Radio. I'm Ian Jessup.
And I'm Corey Yelland.
Our guest today has dedicated his life to educating people around the world about the medical benefits of cannabis ever since his son William died of epilepsy in June of last year. He's the creator of Something Has to Change and Now. He produces videos from Gramps' Place, a backyard shed converted to a video studio. And you can find his videos on YouTube, and he also has a Facebook page. And joining us from Texas is Chris Grisolia. Chris, it's good of you to do this. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
For those listeners who may be unfamiliar with your story, give us some background on your son William and what happened to him.
Well, try to make a long story short. Basically, when he was about 9.5 years old, he had his first seizure. And, of course, we took him to the hospital, had him all checked out, and they couldn't find anything at that time, which is so often the case with people with epilepsy. They never really find a actual cause. But he didn't have another seizure for probably close to 1.5 years, and they weren't really that frequent. And so we had been given the prognosis from a neurologist that basically he felt like he fit into a category of children that manifest epilepsy between the ages of 8 and 10 and generally grow out of it between the ages of 12 and 14. So with his frequency, naturally, we were hopeful that would be the case, but it wasn't. It continued. As he got older, the frequency became more and more frequent. Typically, he was probably having them anywhere from every 2 to 3 months as he was entering into high school. It was kind of troublesome for him as far as his lifestyle because he never knew when it was going to happen. There were no warning signs, no indications whatsoever. He would just he could be walking across the school cafeteria and just fall out in a full grand mal seizure and be out for up to 6, 7, 8 minutes. At any rate, when he started driving, started working, he got older. He hadn't taken any medications up to that point because his mother and I were kind of at odds over that issue. And being divorced, that's a hard aspect to traverse. Needless to say, he came to me when he was of age to make his own decisions and wanted help. So I took him to another doctor. They started him on some medications. He tried probably 6 or 7 different medications over the years, but the effect was almost exactly the opposite of what you would expect. Medication's supposed to help a situation. And with him, the frequency just seemed to get closer and closer and closer. In the end, he was having seizures. From what I understood, it was about every 2 to 3 weeks. I've learned in recent weeks from his brother that it was probably more like once a week. And June 13th of last year, he seized as he was getting ready to go to work, and that was it. He didn't wake up.
Did you ever at all discuss the possibility of using cannabis with your son?
Yes, actually, we had discussed it briefly because, we'd heard of several stories from several people. Another little girl from Texas here who's in Colorado now by the name of Alexis Bortel has had over 2 years now completely seizure-free using nothing but cannabis for her treatment. And she was having anywhere from 30 to 100 seizures a day before switching to cannabis, which is just absolutely amazing to me. But we heard of some of these stories, and we talked about it. But living in southern Oklahoma, where he lived, he wasn't legal, so he didn't have that opportunity. And with seizure disorder, if you have seizures fairly frequently, you're not allowed to drive a vehicle, so he was dependent on family and friends to get him to the store, to work, you name it. And he just didn't feel like he had the ability to move to Colorado like some other people have, so that they can gain access.
Chris,
we really didn't.
Can I just ask, how old was William at this point?
At the point when he passed?
Yes.
He was 23.
23.
Yeah. He would have been 24 years old today. But at any rate, we looked at it briefly, but he just wouldn't break the law, so he was kind of not allowed, so to speak.
Chris, do you ever look back and think that if your son William had taken marijuana, that he would be alive today? What's your feeling with respect to that?
Well, we got to be honest. Nobody will ever really know the answer to that question, just because of the fact that he didn't get that opportunity. But the number of people I've found and the number of scientific studies, clinical trials around the world, personal stories that I've read, people that have contacted me through my page that are of all ages, from children to people in their 70s who are using cannabis for treatment of their epileptic condition and doing it with better success than anything they've ever used in their life. Just all of that put together, I can't help but believe that his life would have been much better at the very least, and I can't help believe that it would have been longer. I mean, it's just I can't see it any other way. There's too much evidence that states that would be the case.
Yeah, we have interviewed a number of people on this program whose children have had epilepsy and had really, really severe epilepsy and were on many pharmaceutical medications. And as a result of using cannabis, they have reduced their child's epilepsy seizures to almost zero and have really gotten them off of a whole list of pharmaceutical medications that they were on that were doing actually more harm than good. And
yeah, that's the case with the pharmaceuticals. You're looking at kidney issues, liver issues. This stuff is basically poison from everything I've read about it.
Yeah. What's your personal history with cannabis?
I used cannabis as a recreational item for over 26 years. I started smoking cannabis when I was 17 years old. And I quit a little over 8 years ago when I married my current wife. It was kind of a silent request, but I knew it was her feeling, so I said, what the heck? I gave it up. It's been a long, good run, But, I didn't need it. And I had absolutely zero issue giving it up, which is contrary to what everybody says. It's so addictive.
Yeah.
It's utterly ridiculous. I've quit smoking cigarettes 4 or 5 times over the years, and I've never seen anything harder in my life to quit. I also had, when I was a very young man, a little bout with cocaine addiction. And that's another one that I can tell you is definitely an addictive substance. It's hard to give up. But cannabis is not that way. And somebody who already has a history with addictive behavior surely should have had an issue, and I had zero. Also, contrary to the popular belief, what I like to call propaganda that's pushed around the world, about how if you're a cannabis user, you become stupid and you become a lazy person, someone who's unsuccessful and unproductive. And I didn't have a problem with that either. By the age of 21, I was the general store manager of a major retail chain outlet, and I was managing a 35,000 square foot store. I did that for about 5.5 years, and then retail started to change, and the responsibilities and the actual job aspect changed to where it was no longer fun. So through a little provocation from a former boss, I was decided to try outside sales for a little bit, which turned out to not really be my ball of wax. So I decided at that point, I was about 26 years old, that I needed to maybe learn a trade, have some kind of trade experience to fall back on. I had a family full of tradesmen. So And I was at a point where I didn't really know where I was going to go. So I started out in the construction industry. And from the time I started, about 2 years later, I was in charge of a 9-story building all on my own. And from that point on, for 19 plus years, I was always even changing companies from one company to another, as is widely known factor of construction work. I always moved directly into a supervisory position. And I mean, I've built things from 20-story buildings to little storefront lease spaces, but the whole time being productive and successful, which is completely the opposite of what everybody thinks. And now I am a project manager for a major construction company in Fort Worth, Texas. And I got there the whole while being a quote-unquote pothead, you know. So that's a little bit of my history and a little bit of my philosophy surrounding it, I guess.
Yeah, pothead is really a pejorative term, and
exactly.
Yeah, and what we don't do for love, right, Chris? I mean, you gave it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think quitting cigarettes, quitting smoking is, I know I've said this before, is one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was tough.
Yeah. I've been without cigarettes for a little over a year and a half now. I think I've finally gotten rid of them for good.
Yeah, the craving just lasts for so long. And when people smoke, the smell of the smoke after you've quit is just, it's intoxicating. It's like it's like a beautiful woman's perfume. Mm-hmm. Corey's nodding at me like, yeah.
No, I get it, Ian. I get it.
Yeah, I get it. Chris, what made, outside of the fact that your son could have used cannabis, but he didn't want to break the law, what made you decide to become such a vocal activist for cannabis? Well,
that he and I had discussed the possible use of cannabis for his treatment, but I didn't know until after he passed, and it was actually after the funeral that his mother and I were talking, and she brought it up and said, you know, I tried to get that kid to do something, you know, and I said, what do you mean? And we started talking about it, and I said, well, we had talked about it too, but, you know, he didn't want to break the law. And that's kind of what really sparked the beginning of my in-depth research, was that conversation. And after I started doing a little research, it took me all of about an hour to find out of a medical clinical trial that was completed in the United States in 1937 in using cannabis for treatment in epileptic patients. And when I found that and I opened it up and I started to read it, I started to get pretty damn mad. You know, 1937 was when the Marijuana Tax Act was passed in the United States. The American Medical Association testified against it. And something that I just recently found out is that the AMA representatives were not in the chambers when the vote was actually taken. So when the question was asked, it was a representative who answered, "We agree," for the AMA, which just totally boggles the mind. But, you know, and it started to breed an in-depth anger inside me, because they knew in 1937 when they started all of this in the United States. You know, it just, it just,
yeah,
I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I can understand your frustration, because a person on our Facebook page sent us a document yesterday. I was looking through it, and I haven't read the whole thing, but it was the testimony that you're referring to, and the American Medical Association said there is absolutely no proof that cannabis, they called it marijuana at the time, that marijuana causes any harm to an individual. And the American
any age.
Of any age, exactly. And the American Medical Association, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the second or third most prescribed medication at the time. I may be wrong in that, but it was widely used as a tincture during the early part of the 20th century.
Absolutely.
And it was very beneficial for many things that we're supposedly discovering today. And this was political. It's been a political decision all around the world, and it has harmed people irreparably for decades. And,
absolutely.
And I think you have discovered that, and I think the more people who are educated through programs like this, by you telling your story, by you doing your videos and Facebook page stories, people can educate themselves and make their own decisions on whether this is good for them or they want to accept the political propaganda that has been perpetrated for the last 70 years or more.
Yeah, that's the goal anyway, is to educate and motivate people, and maybe in the process agitate as well. It just amazes me that goofy little Marijuana Tax Act, their first effort for making it illegal in the United States, was deemed unconstitutional in 1969. And it was a Supreme Court case called Leary versus the United States. And, of course, immediately the following year, 1970, is when Nixon pushed Congress for the Controlled Substances Act, which was, of course, the creation of the DEA and all of that mess. And ironically enough, it was after they got that passed and after the creation of the DEA that Nixon still wanted even more evidence, to support his story. So he had scientific research started, funded by the National Institutes of Health through the Medical College of Virginia to attempt to prove that cannabis kills brain cells and hampers the immune system. What they found is it wasn't killing brain cells. In fact, it wasn't hurting them at all. They also found that it was killing cancer cells instead. They also proved it enhanced the immune system instead of hampering it. So, of course, they ceased that study immediately and buried those reports, Yet the laws stay in place. We've had in the United States, we had the Freedom of Information Act that was passed several years back, and it's basically through that a lot of this is coming to light to the public's knowledge. And you would think at this point in time, with the states in the United States that have 100% fully legalized recreational and medical, and all the myths that are out there, that we're going to see higher crime rates. We're going to see higher accident death tolls because people are going to get high, get behind the wheel, and cause accidents. And all of those things are doing the exact opposite. And something that nobody even thought of when they made it legal in these areas is how the narcotics, are supposed to be, marijuana is a gateway to the narcotics. Well, narcotic use is going down in those states. It's just totally opposite of everything we've been told for decades.
Yeah, we've interviewed a woman in Florida who was on heroin, and she got off heroin by using cannabis.
Cold turkey.
Cold turkey, that's right.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
And who was it we were talking to the other day? A woman who was on painkillers, and she was on methadone. She was started off with 10 milligrams of methadone.
10 milligrams, yeah, that's correct.
And went on to, she was up to 90 milligrams.
90 milligrams. And she came off of methadone, same thing, cold turkey with cannabis.
It's amazing to me the number of people that are contacting me and telling me their stories now that I'm starting to get somewhat of a following. I'm approaching 10,000 likes on my page, so I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What do you receive any negative feedback?
I have had, if I was to try to put it into a percentage perspective, maybe less than 1/100%. And some of those I have been able to change their mind along the way.
It's not difficult to change someone's mind if they have the information in front of them. I was talking to a lawyer today, and a well-known lawyer in where we live, and his wife is expecting a baby, and he said that he would probably grow marijuana if the baby couldn't eat the leaves. And I told him, I said, well, if you eat the leaves, there's no psychoactive effect. You have to heat it up first. And he said, oh, I didn't know that. And so it's just, this is something that's going to take years and years and years to start to educate people. But I think with the states that are legal in the United States, both medically and recreationally, and Canada is going to legalize it recreationally on July 1st of 2018, I think what will happen is people will start to slowly change their mind when they see that drunk driving charges and situations like that are reduced, domestic violence is reduced, and all the criminal activity, I shouldn't say all the criminal activity, but some criminal activity will be reduced. It will be a much better understanding that people have that cannabis is not this dangerous crack cocaine that people believe it is. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It's just ridiculous. You know, the whole storyline, how it was even created to begin with reefer madness and all that craziness. You know, it just goes to show you how easily people can be made to believe something. And of course, you know, they made it easy in the United States with William Randolph Hearst being a newspaper, newspaper tycoon that he was. He had access to publish whatever he wanted, full page, you know. But it's ludicrous. It's completely and totally ludicrous.
What is this illegal situation or illegality of cannabis in the state of Texas?
Basically, they have what they call the Compassionate Use Act, which is like minimal CBD oil for minimal conditions. And that's it. Other than that, you're not allowed.
I mean, CBD is non-psychoactive. It's made from the hemp plant, and the Constitution of the United States was written on hemp, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just saying.
Washington used to grow it.
You figure that one out.
Yeah. I got to point out one thing that's really special to me that has started to happen a little bit of when you talk about. You asked me about, you know, the response I get and some of the comments I get from people and whatnot. I had one that literally broke me down into tears a couple weeks ago. I was commenting back and forth on one of my posts with some people on the page, and one person was thanking me and for giving her the information and doing what I'm doing, and I responded with no thanks are necessary. If I had known the real benefits sooner, I would have forced my son to break the law, whether he was an adult or not. It's too late for him, but I can do whatever I can to make change happen in his memory. I will not rest until we have it where we need it. And the response that I got back from that was pretty overwhelming. The response was, well, just so you know, our journey began with this page. You have made a huge difference in our lives. Our girl is suffering a lot less, and thank God we went against pharmaceuticals.
That's awesome.
I don't know whether you know the history of my co-host here, Corey Yelland. She was diagnosed with anal canal cancer 5 years ago and told that she needed radiation. She refused because of the side effects, like closing your orifices and burning your pubic bone. And the oncologist said, well, you've got 2 to 4 months to live, 6 at the outside. She researched cannabis oil, started making her own, started taking it, and year later, less than a year later, I think, Corey, you went back and you were clear.
Yeah, cancer-free.
Cancer-free. And that was 5 years ago. And to the surprise of your oncologist, who kind of done a 180. He's more interested in cannabis now, isn't he?
With the GP.
GP,
the GP's done a 180. Yeah, he covered his ears. He didn't even want to hear what I was doing. He literally covered his ears and went, la, 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 la. And now he's like, cannabis is amazing, Corey. Do you know how many people we kill each day with pharmaceuticals?
Yeah.
You know, so it's sometimes
die every day from chemo.
Well, exactly. And it's just a matter of we really need to educate people. And then Ian had me on his show for a half hour and got an overwhelming response. And
yeah, I used to do a radio show, talk show in where we live, and got fired last summer. So. But so Corey and I just decided to do this. And when we were looking for a place to do this, a woman offered her office space, a spare office space, until she found out what we were going to talk about. And then she told us that it didn't agree with her values.
And she totally reneged. But, you know, I think both Ian and I can relate to what you were saying, you know, that message that you had from that woman about how you've touched her life. And I think maybe it would be fair to say, Ian, that perhaps one real pinnacle point for you was when we were actually on the air and you got that email.
Yeah, tell Chris the story of the woman whose daughter was in intensive care. Yeah,
we're on the air when when Ian received this email, and what had happened was she'd been flown back to Toronto, where she had a 26-year-old, 26, I think, daughter who had out of the blue been diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Had done one round of chemo, and it almost killed her. She was in intensive care, and she was not expected to live the week. And when the mom was there, she had her laptop, and she happened to tune in and listen to us on public radio and heard my story and contacted me, and I was able to kind of get her pointed in the right direction. And this letter that we received while we were on the air was basically saying thank you, and her daughter was healthier than she'd been in years, and the cancer was almost completely gone.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was one that really almost brought me to tears, and it really changed my outlook in cannabis, because I knew nothing about cannabis until I started interviewing Corey. And when I had her on the air, people would just phone in from all over, particularly from the United States. And, boy, it really changed my attitude. And I guess I did a 180 as well. And I think it's absolutely beyond absurd that governments can make a plant illegal.
That's exactly my point. It's a friggin' plant. A seed that you plant in the ground, it sprouts, it grows. It's a plant.
It's a plant.
I know. I mean, magic mushrooms aren't illegal, are they?
Depends on where you're at, actually.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Chris, anything you want to say in conclusion? I think what you're doing is absolutely fabulous. I think your son would be extremely proud of you.
I think so too. I think it's wonderful that you're putting so much effort and energy into spreading the word and potentially saving other parents from going through what you went through.
Well, that's my goal. And you know, with everything I've learned, everything that comes to light more and more just pushes me even further. And I can't rest at night knowing that I'm not doing anything about it. I mean, I've always been a more or less politically motivated person, and generally for just general politics altogether, but I've completely dropped that whole aspect of my life, and I concentrate when I have free time, which is not much, but gives me enough to do what I'm doing. And I've concentrated on nothing but this. I have probably close to 2,000 hours just in research since last June. And, I dedicate 3 to 4 hours a day to it. And I'm not going to stop. I was in the process today to send out a letter that I wrote that I already sent to every U.S. senator in the United States. And I was trying to send it out this morning to every House of Representative member. But they have this fancy little thing that you have to put in your zip code, and if your zip code's not in their constituency, you can't send them an email. So I guess I've decided that my next video that I'm probably going to post later today, will be basically that letter as an open letter to the House of Representatives of the United States of America. You know, education, motivation, and agitation is how we get things done in the United States, for sure. Something that our people have forgotten how to do. And my goal is to spend every last day of my life, if that's what it takes, to make this happen.
Good for you.
I like that. Motivation, education, and
agitation.
Oh, I love the agitation. Yeah, Chris, how can people find your videos?
If you have a Facebook profile, if you just go up to the search bar at the top of the page and just type in "Something Has to Change and Now," that'll get you to the Facebook page. I have most of them have been transferred from YouTube onto the Facebook page now. There's, I think, 3 or 4 that are still only on YouTube. But you can do the same thing as far as YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search "Something Has to Change and Now." It brings up a lot of stuff, even some of just the videos, but the page is also there, the YouTube channel. So,
Chris, it was a pleasure to talk to you. You're doing wonderful work, and we look forward to chatting with you again. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
That's it, another edition of Cannabis Health Radio. If you'd like to tell your story about using cannabis for medical purposes, send us an email at info@cannabishealthradio.com or contact us on Facebook or Twitter. Wherever you are in the world, thanks very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Cannabis Health Radio podcast. Visit our website, cannabishealthradio.com, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.